Breaking news: Moscow on its knees. Kremlin begs for peace in Istanbul. But this isn't diplomacy, it's desperation after defeat. Erdogan makes his move. Turkey steps in as a peace broker. Poland pours over $4 billion into aid for Ukraine. China turns toward the US. Putin's world is collapsing. The whole planet is turning its back on the Kremlin. It is the final act for Putin's empire, and who will deliver the last blow? This is Ukraine Today. I'm Zoroslava Kolesnikova. Stay tuned. The shocking details of Russia's defeat are coming up next. Is Moscow begging for peace? Russia suddenly claims it's ready for talks with Ukraine in Istanbul. The Kremlin, after years of threats and blackmail, is now asking for a meeting, and the desperation is impossible to hide. According to Russia's envoy in Turkey, Alexei Ivanov, Moscow is ready to resume direct negotiations with Kiev anytime if Ukraine shows political will. The Kremlin pretends it wants peace, but the truth is clear.
The Russian side has repeatedly emphasized that we are ready to continue direct negotiations with the Ukrainian side. And our Turkish partners also consistently emphasize that the Istanbul platform remains at our disposal. This door remains open for us.
Russian defeats on the battlefield, thought sanctions, and total international isolation are forcing Moscow to beg for dialogue. All of this just a desperate attempt to buy time and save face after catastrophic losses near Pokrovsk and in the Kupiansk area. Ukraine hasn't responded yet. Diplomats remind that Moscow had previously sent several initiatives to Kiev, including offers to create 3 online communication groups. But there's been zero reaction from Ukraine. Kiev stands firm. First, Russia must stop the fighting. When we'll talk. Meanwhile, Erdogan steps into the game. Turkey is ready to play peacemaker between Ukraine and Russia. While the Kremlin begs for talks and the world watches Moscow new defeats, Ankara makes a move that could change the course of the war. Turkish President Recep Erdogan took the stage and 2 major global platforms at UN General Assembly in New York and the TRT World Forum 2025 and dropped a series of bold headline-making statements.
We welcome the Istanbul process with our neighbors, Russia and Ukraine. Through direct negotiations, we have facilitated the exchange of prisoners and bodies of the dead, working to define the terms of peace talks.
Turkey declared there are no winners in war and no losers in a just peace. President Erdogan vowed that Ankara will keep pushing to achieve a ceasefire and build a lasting and fair peace.
I hope that a compromise will be found between the parties in the near future, paving the way for the 2 neighboring peoples to live side by side in peace again.
The statement came as the Kremlin made a new push to force Kiev into talks in Istanbul. Moscow hesitantly announced it's ready at any moment to sit down for negotiations if Ukraine shows political will, but experts see this as pure panic. Russia has lost the initiative and desperately clinging to its last role. Erdogan, meanwhile, is making it clear who now controls the diplomatic playing field. His country has already played a key role in the grain deal, in prisoner exchange, and even in securing safety across the Black Sea.
We will act on the principle. There are no winners in war, and there are no losers in a just peace.
But Turkey has now officially confirmed its readiness to host both Ukraine and Russia. Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan announced that his country has formally offered to hold a new round of peace talks, which could even include a leaders' summit in Istanbul. Not only Turkey calls for peace, Poland has been standing with Ukraine since day 1 of the full-scale invasion. Over $4 billion in aid, more than some EU countries combined. Thanks aircraft, air defense system and ammunition, Warsaw became a shield that drugs Ukraine, skies and borders. But why is Poland so determined to support Kiev? What role does it seek in post-war Europe, and could Warsaw become Ukraine's main strategic ally and building a new security order for the region? All the answers right now.
over 120 billion zlotys or $4 billion. This is the significant amount that Poland has spent on aid to Ukraine since the start of the full-scale invasion. This includes both humanitarian and military support.
Poland was one of the first countries to provide Ukraine with tanks, ammunition, and defense equipment on a large scale. In 2022 to 2023, it delivered, among other things, more than 300 tanks, as well as armored personnel carriers, artillery systems, air defense systems, drones, mortars, assault rifles, and over 100 million rounds of ammunition. 10 airplanes and helicopters were also sent to Ukraine. Between 2022 and 2024, Poland provided Ukraine with 47 military aid packages. The value of the equipment delivered in 2022 alone amounted to 7.23 billion zlotys, and in 2023 to 2024, another 5.63 billion. Poland also supplied more than 19,500 Starlink terminals, providing the Ukrainian armed forces with stable satellite communication. This accounted for almost half of all terminals used in Ukraine by the end of 2023.
Poland's assistance to Ukraine is not the result of some romantic fascination, but is highly pragmatic. Our neighbors understand that if Ukraine falls, Poland will be next.
After all, a fighting Ukraine gives Europe time to better prepare for threats. This time is needed and we have no right to waste a single minute. We will be held accountable for every minute.
318 tanks were delivered to Kiev and Warsaw, including modernized T-71, M1R, PT-91, and Leopard 2 models. This is more than anyone else has provided. The total value of the free aid, including training, logistics, repairs, and medical support up to March of this year, exceeded $4 billion. Specifically, in 2022, it amounted to $1.6 billion, and in 2023 and 2024, $1.3 billion each year. Poland has also provided assistance.
Poland's military aid, 586 armored vehicles, 137 artillery systems, 10 Mi-24 helicopters, 10 MiG-29 fighter jets, 287 man-portable air defense systems, 44 air-to-air missiles, over 100 units of small arms, 89 mortars, 4 Grad multiple launch rocket systems, and over 100 million rounds of ammunition.
In addition to gratuitous aid in just 2022 and 2023, Ukraine purchased weapons from Poland worth more than 2.2 billion euros. The largest contract was the agreement for 56 self-propelled Crab howitzers. Of these, 36 have already been delivered. The countries are establishing joint production of weapons and equipment. The parties have agreed on the joint production of 125mm tank ammunition. There are also plans for joint production of other weapons and military equipment, including the establishment of Polish company manufacturing facilities in Ukraine.
It is necessary to mobilize the industry. Polish and Ukrainian industries should make joint investments not only during the war, but also to develop their deterrence potential. These initiatives are very much needed. It is also very important for us to improve economic relations. We support Ukraine.
Poland has become the main hub for supplying weapons to Ukraine. Also, during the war, more than 30,000 Ukrainian soldiers have undergone training on the territory of the country. With each year of the war, the assistance and joint cooperation between Poland and Ukraine only grows stronger.
China eases tensions with the US, a strategic move or a trap for the West. Russia keeps losing France, even its most powerful one. China has announced a temporary suspension for additional tariffs on American goods, easing trade tensions with Washington for a year. But that's behind this move. It is the first step toward a major US-China deal or just tactical pause before a new trade war. The full story coming up next.
A truce or the calm before the storm? China has announced the suspension of an additional 24% tariff on American goods. The relief will last for a year, but at the same time, the base tariff of 10%, which was introduced in response to a similar tariff by Trump announced in April, remains in place.
The US is the largest market for goods, and China is the largest producer of goods. How does China make money? By supplying its products to the largest markets. As we noted, the US is the primary one.
The decision on the new agreement was made after a meeting between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping, according to Reuters. Thanks to this, tariffs of up to 15% on certain types of agricultural products from the US have also been lifted.
From an economic standpoint, China and the US can't really be in different, let's say, not just camps, but be adversaries. In fact, they are in different camps since they're competing over which of them is the leading economy.
China's Ministry of Finance noted that starting March 4th, they will suspend all tariffs on soybeans and other U.S. agricultural products, including corn, wheat, sorghum, and chicken. It was stated that this decision was made in accordance with the consensus reached during economic and trade consultations between China and the U.S.
Therefore, despite all the political ambitions and attempts to show that we can compete, that we will be leaders, and so on and so forth, I emphasize, from the perspective of China's economic interests, it needs the U.S.
The U.S. and China have also agreed to establish direct communication between their armed forces. As stated by Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth, this will help prevent potential conflicts between the countries. Another step China has taken toward the U.S. is its refusal to import Russian oil. According to Bloomberg, major state-owned companies and smaller private enterprises in China have canceled nearly half of their oil shipments from Russia after the U.S. imposed sanctions on Rosneft and Lukoil in October. And
when the question arises of whom China will choose, Russia or the US, one needs to understand a simple thing. There is the US, and one of its states, the largest, is California. California's economy is twice the size of Russia's economy, and that's just one state. The United States of America is like two Russian economies. Naturally, for China, the US is much more important than Russia.
Putin absolutely does not want to lose one of his few remaining partners, so he sent his prime minister with greetings to Beijing. As a result of the negotiations, the parties signed about 10 cooperation agreements in the fields of energy, space, and high technology.
Russia is of interest to China as a supplier of raw materials and goods. But Russia doesn't really have much choice except to sell everything to China. China understands that Russia depends on it and that Russia won't take any steps against it. And with America, it's interesting because it's a sales market.
According to Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service, Russia is sinking ever deeper into economic dependence on China. Raw material projects in the Far East and Siberia are turning the region into a resource base for China, while local communities remain excluded from the promised benefits.
That's all for today on Ukraine Today. If you believe the truth should be louder than propaganda, like, share and subscribe. Your support keeps us on the information frontline, exposing lies, defending freedom and standing with Ukraine. Stay strong, stay informed and stay with Ukraine.